The salvage ship Kappa's return had been picking through dead space stations for 3 weeks straight. Every corridor looked the same, empty, cold, picked clean by time and rust. That was the job though. Find what was left, strip it down, sell it off. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept the crew fed. Tom Reeves had been doing this work for 15 years. Long enough to know when something felt off, even if he couldn't explain why. Kepler 7 felt different from the moment they docked. The station hung in the darkness like a tomb, its exterior scarred and weathered. The docking ring groaned under their ship's weight, and nobody on the crew liked the sound of it. But Captain Hollis had given the orders, and Keyes didn't question orders. He just did the work. The team split up as they always did. 2 people checking the main power systems, 2 more cataloging the storage bays, and Reeves heading toward what the station's old logs called the archive chamber. Nobody knew what was actually archived there, but the sealed sections usually meant valuable salvage. Reeves moved through the corridors with his scanner out, checking for anything worth taking. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls. The dust was so thick he could write his name in it. Then he stepped into the archive chamber and time seemed to stop. Standing in the center of the massive room was a figure. Not a person. Not a machine exactly either, but something in between. It was easily 20 feet tall, built from some kind of polished metal that caught the light and threw it back in strange dancing patterns. The figure was vaguely humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, but everything was too angular, too precise. This wasn't human engineering. This wasn't anything Reeves had ever seen before. His first thought was that it had to be a statue. Some kind of monument left behind by whoever had originally built this station. Reeves had seen alien art before. Most of it was boring. But this thing was different. It had weight to it. Presence. Even standing completely still, it commanded the entire room. Reeves approached it cautiously, running his handheld diagnostic scanner across the surface. His scanner was old but reliable, the same tool he'd been using for years, updated just enough to read most standard configurations. He was looking for an access panel, anything that might tell him what this thing was made of or whether any of its parts were worth something. That was his job. Look, analyze, strip, sell. He found what looked like a sealed panel on the figure's chest. It was smooth, seamless, no visible seams or locking mechanisms. Reeves pressed his tools against it gently, trying to find some way to open it without causing damage. The tools hummed against the metal surface, running frequency scans and pressure readings. Nothing happened for a long moment. Reeves was about to give up when something shifted. It was subtle at first. A vibration through the metal. Then a faint grinding sound, like something massive and old struggling to move after a very long sleep. Reeves stepped back, suddenly aware that he was alone in this chamber with something he didn't understand. The figure's head moved. Not the sudden jerk of a machine activating. It was smooth, deliberate, the kind of movement that suggested thought and intention. Reeves watched, barely breathing, as the massive metal head turned to face him directly. That's when he saw the eyes. They weren't regular eyes. They were geometric shapes, perfect crystalline structures that caught and refracted light in ways that shouldn't have been possible. But they were looking at him. Definitely looking at him. The eyes glowed with an inner light, pale blue and steady, and Reeves realized with a shock that something intelligent was behind them. Something that had been waiting. Something that had just woken up. Then it spoke. The voice came from somewhere deep inside the metal body, resonating through the walls of the chamber. It sounded like stone grinding against stone, like metal tearing, like 1,000 years of rust breaking loose all at once. But the words were clear enough, delivered in a language Reeves understood perfectly. Finally, the voice said, slow and deliberate, "Someone has come." Reeves found that his hand was shaking. His scanner was still in his grip, but he'd completely forgotten about it. The figure towered above him, waiting. Those crystalline eyes stayed fixed on his face, studying him with an intensity that made Reeves feel small and very, very exposed. He swallowed hard. What are you?" he managed to ask. The figure didn't answer right away. It just kept looking down at him, and Reeves got the distinct impression that it was trying to figure out how to explain something incredibly complex to someone it considered extremely young and simple. "I am a guardian," it finally said. "And I have been waiting for someone to find me for a very long time." Reeves took a step back, his mind racing. A guardian. That word meant something specific in salvage culture. Old security systems, automated defense platforms, things left behind by civilizations that didn't want their important stuff falling into the wrong hands. But those were usually just machines. Programs running on autopilot. This thing was talking to him like it had been waiting specifically for him to show up. "I'm sorry, but what do you mean you've been waiting?" Reeves asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Waiting for who? For how long? The figure, Theric, it had said its name was Theric, tried to move. That's when Reeves saw the problem. The Guardian's arm jerked forward a few inches, then stopped dead. There was a grinding sound, loud and painful to listen to, like metal screaming. Reeves could see the strain in the mechanical joints, the way they fought against themselves. 1,358 years, Theric said, and there was something almost broken in the voice now. Something that sounded like frustration mixed with desperation. I have stood in this chamber for that long, protecting what lies beneath. But my systems are failing. Everything is locked, frozen. I cannot move my limbs. I cannot complete my function. Reeves looked down at his scanner. The readings made his stomach drop. There was definitely something down below the archive chamber floor, some kind of containment system that was actively running. But the energy signature was unstable, flickering like a candle about to go out. Whatever was being kept in that vault, whatever this Guardian had been protecting for over 1,000 years, it was starting to break free. What's down there? Reeves asked. What are you guarding? Knowledge, Theric said simply. Knowledge that civilizations have destroyed themselves trying to obtain. Weapons. Technology. Truths about the universe that some minds were not meant to hold. I was created to keep it locked away. To never let anyone access it, no matter what they offered or threatened. For 13 centuries I succeeded. But the rust has won. My joints have seized. The power systems that maintain the containment field are failing because I can no longer move to repair them. Soon what I guard will be released into your universe. And that cannot happen. Reeves's radio crackled. It was Captain Hollis from the ship. Reeves, status report. What's taking so long down there? Reeves looked up at Theric's massive form, at the corrosion he could now see coating every joint and seam. The metal was oxidized, pitted, scarred by centuries of exposure to the station's atmosphere. In places, entire sections had turned to rust, weak and flaking. This thing had literally stood still for so long that time had eaten it alive. Captain, I found something, Reeves said carefully. The archive chamber has some kind of active system down here. I need to run more diagnostics. This is going to take time. We don't have time, Hollis replied. We got a schedule to keep. Finish your survey and get back topside. We lift off in 2 hours. Reeves closed his eyes for a second. He knew what the protocol was. Anomalies got reported, not investigated. The company didn't pay for curiosity. They paid for speed and efficiency. But looking up at this massive figure that had been standing alone for over 1,000 years, Reeves found he couldn't just walk away. Captain, I need more time, he said. There's something here that needs proper examination. This isn't just salvage. There was a pause. Reeves could practically hear Hollis frowning on the other end of the line. How much more time? A few days at least, Reeves said. He was already making the decision, already committing to it. The structure down here is unstable. We could damage something valuable if we rush. Hollis sighed. It was the sound of someone who'd been doing this job too long to argue with instinct. Fine. But I'm leaving you down there with minimal supplies. 2 days, Reeves. Then we come back with or without you. Understood, Captain, Reeves said and cut the connection. He looked up at Theric. Okay, I'm staying. Show me what needs fixing. Theric's crystalline eyes seemed to brighten slightly. You would attempt to repair me? You, a member of a species that barely understands its own primitive technology? Look, you've got rust. I've got tools, Reeves said, pulling his repair kit from his belt. I've been fixing broken machines for 15 years. Rust is rust. Metal is metal. Maybe I don't understand alien engineering, but I understand the basic principle. Things break and you fix them or they get worse. Theric was quiet for a moment. When it spoke again, the grinding stone quality of its voice had softened slightly. Then we will begin. My primary joint locks have seized the worst. The corrosion has worked its way deep into the mechanical systems. If you can free even one major articulation, I may be able to move enough to reach the containment field regulators. Reeves moved closer, running his scanner over Theric's shoulder joint. The readings were bad, years upon years of accumulated rust and mineral deposits, oxidation so deep it had fused metal components together. But as Reeves examined it, he started to see patterns in the damage, ways he might work around it. All right, he said mostly to himself. Let's get to work. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. He just knew that something in the way Theric had said those words, "Finally, someone has come," meant that walking away wasn't really an option anymore. Sometimes the universe hands you a problem too big to ignore, and you either face it or spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to try. Reeves lost track of time somewhere around hour 36. He'd started with the shoulder joint, the one that seemed the most accessible. But as he worked deeper into Tharic's mechanical systems, he realized that alien engineering followed completely different logic than anything he'd ever encountered. The joints weren't held together by bolts and screws. Instead, they used some kind of crystalline lattice structure that had fused together over the centuries as the corrosion spread. It was like trying to untangle a knot made of glass and rust at the same time. His hands were bleeding. Small cuts from sharp metal edges, from pushing too hard against corroded surfaces. He'd wrapped them with tape from his emergency kit, but the tape kept coming loose. By the second day, his fingers were raw and aching. Every movement sent little jolts of pain up his arms. He didn't care. There was something almost meditative about the work. The focus required to solve each small problem kept his mind from wandering to bigger questions, like whether this was actually going to work or if he was just wasting time trying to fix something that was fundamentally broken. Tharic talked while he worked. Not constantly, but in fragments. The Guardian would speak for a while, then fall silent for hours, then pick up a thought as if no time had passed at all. There was a civilization, Tharic said on the morning of the second day, its voice quiet and distant. The Valerian. They were brilliant. They understood mathematics and physics at levels your people haven't reached yet. They thought they had solved everything. They believed that knowledge was always good, that understanding the universe could only benefit them. Reeves was working on a particularly stubborn joint, using a chemical solvent to break down the oxidation. The stuff smelled terrible and made his eyes water. He paused, looking up at the Guardian. What happened to them? They found what was in the archive, Tharic said. Or rather, they found how to make what was in the archive. The knowledge of how to do something so destructive that it unmakes reality itself. Not just kills. Unmakes. Erases. Turns existence into nothing. Reeves whistled low. That's not good. They used it, Tharic continued. Against their enemies. And then their enemies tried to use it too. Within 3 generations, the Valerian civilization ceased to exist. Not conquered. Not destroyed. Unmade. As if they had never been. Reeves went back to working on the joint, but slower now, more thoughtful. So you've been standing here for over 1,000 years to make sure nobody else finds out how to do that? I have been standing here, Tharic confirmed, to ensure that knowledge remains locked away. I was built with a singular purpose, to never move, never abandon my post, to be so trustworthy and so permanent that no one could doubt my commitment. I was designed to be unbreakable. Yet here I am, broken, frozen, unable to even complete my fundamental function. Yeah, well, nothing lasts forever, Reeves said, and he wasn't sure if he was trying to comfort the Guardian or just stating a fact. Even things built to last forever get tired eventually. He worked through the night of the second day, staying awake on terrible coffee and determination. His body was screaming at him. His back ached from bending over Tharic's joints, his hands were shot, his eyes felt like they were full of sand. But slowly, methodically, the rust began to give way. Sections of the corroded metal came free in flakes and chunks. He used lubricants and solvents, heat guns and careful mechanical pressure, every technique he'd learned over 15 years of salvage work. Then, on the morning of the third day, something shifted. Reeves was working on the main shoulder articulation when he felt it move. Not much. Just a fraction of an inch. But it was movement that hadn't been there before. The joint was still incredibly stiff, still fighting against him, but it was no longer completely locked. Try moving your arm, Reeves said, stepping back. Just slowly. Don't force it. Tharic's arm moved. It was jerky, hesitant, like someone learning to use a limb after a long sleep. But it moved. The Guardian's metal hand flexed, each finger articulating with careful precision. Rust fell away in sheets, revealing cleaner metal underneath. Tharic rotated its arm through a full range of motion, something it hadn't been able to do in over 1,000 years. By my creators, Tharic said softly. I had forgotten what this felt like. Reeves found himself grinning despite his exhaustion. That's just the shoulder. We've got a lot more to go. But we're making progress. Over the next hours, Reeves continued working, and Tharic began to move more freely. The Guardian tested each joint as it was freed, moving slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. By the end of the third day, Tharic could move its entire upper body. It stood up straighter, lifted its arms, rotated its torso. Each movement seemed to bring something back to life in the ancient machine. You are young, Tharic observed at one point, watching Reeves work on a particularly stubborn knee joint. The Guardian's crystalline eyes tracked the human's movements with what might have been curiosity. Your species barely knows how to leave its planet. Most civilizations we have encountered take thousands of years to develop interstellar travel. Yet here you are, traveling through the void on machines held together by hope and improvisation. Reeves laughed, wiping sweat from his forehead. His hands were blistered now, wrapped in fresh bandages, but he barely noticed the pain anymore. Yeah, well, humans are good at fixing things. Even when those things are ancient alien guardians made of rust and attitude. We don't always do things the smart way. We just kind of figure it out as we go. Theric made a sound, something between a mechanical grind and a sound that might have been laughter. It was strange and alien, but it carried something that felt almost like appreciation. You are different, Theric said. Your kind lacks the caution of older civilizations. This should make you dangerous. Instead, it makes you adaptable. Resilient. Reeves looked at the Guardian and smiled. We do our best with what we've got. Reeves was working on Theric's lower leg joint when his scanner started beeping. Not the gentle beep that indicated normal readings. This was the urgent, sharp beep that meant something was coming. Something fast. He pulled the scanner up to his face and his stomach went cold. 3 ships. Not the kind of vessels that ran legitimate salvage operations or scientific expeditions. These were hunter-killer class, stripped down, heavily modified, the kind of ships that belonged to people who operated outside the law. Raiders. Reeves had heard stories about them. They hunted for alien technology, especially archive tech, and sold it to the highest bidder on black markets. Military contractors, wealthy collectors, people with money and no ethics. The kind of people who didn't ask questions about where things came from or what they'd been used for. Incoming contacts, Reeves said out loud, mostly to process the information. 3 ships. Raiders looks like. 72 hours. Raiders, Theric repeated. The Guardian's tone was different now, no longer thoughtful and contemplative. There was an edge to it, something that sounded like old programming activating. I am detecting them now. My sensors are beginning to recover as my systems restart. Reeves could feel the shift in Theric's body. The Guardian was standing taller, its posture changing from something almost relaxed back into a rigid, defensive stance. He could see Theric's hands forming into fists, the mechanical fingers locking tight. When the Guardian spoke again, its voice had taken on a hard, determined quality. My combat protocols are activating, Theric said. I am prepared to defend the archive. I will eliminate the threat. No. Wait, Reeves said quickly, stepping in front of the Guardian. It was a small, almost silly gesture, standing in front of something 20 feet tall that weighed probably 1,000 tons, but it was instinctive. You can't fight them here. Theric looked down at him, and for a moment Reeves wondered if the Guardian was about to point out how absurd it was for a human to tell an ancient defense platform what it could and couldn't do. But Theric seemed to be listening. If you engage in combat here, if there's an explosion or a battle, what happens to the archive? Reeves asked. What happens to that containment field you've been protecting? Theric was silent for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, the Guardian said, the containment would be disrupted. The energy signatures would destabilize. The locked knowledge could be released. Exactly, Reeves said. He was thinking fast now, his mind working through the problem like he worked through a broken machine. Piece by piece, looking for solutions. Fighting here is the worst option. It's what they'd want actually. They probably know there's something valuable down here. If there's a battle, if the place gets torn up, they can pick through the wreckage and grab pieces of whatever's in that vault. Theric lowered itself slightly, bringing its head closer to Reeves. Then what do you propose, human? That I allow them access? That I simply step aside and permit them to plunder what I have sworn to protect? Reeves's mind raced. He looked around the archive chamber, at the equipment scattered across the floor, at Theric's external displays and communication systems. An idea was forming, something crazy but possibly workable. No, Reeves said. We make them think you've never stopped working. That you've been standing here the whole time, protecting this place, never taking a break, never wavering. I don't understand, Theric said. Trust me, Reeves replied. He was already moving, pulling up his portable terminal and connecting it to Theric's external systems. I can hack your display systems. Create false logs. Make it look like you've been running continuous monitoring and defense protocols for the last 13 centuries. Activity reports, sensor sweeps, patrol records. Everything time-stamped and dated going back over 1,000 years. Falsifying records? Theric asked. There was something almost uncertain in the Guardian's voice, like this was a concept it had trouble processing. Lying, Reeves corrected. We're going to lie to them. Make them think you're an active, alert defense system that's been protecting the station non-stop since before their civilizations even existed. Raiders are predators. Predators avoid prey that looks dangerous and alert. They hunt for easy targets. Reeves started working, his fingers flying across the terminal keyboard. He was good at this kind of thing, not quite hacking, more like creative reprogramming. He'd done similar work for salvage operations before, creating false records to explain why certain equipment had been damaged or missing. The principle was the same. Create a convincing story that the evidence would support. He pulled Theric's sensor logs and began editing them, inserting thousands of fabricated activity records spread across the centuries. He made it look like the Guardian had been running constant patrols, monitoring every corridor, checking every system. He created false defense grid activation records, false combat readiness reports, false maintenance logs showing regular upkeep and system checks. When they scan the station, Reeves explained as he worked, they're going to see an active, operational defense platform that's been working non-stop for over 1,000 years. No breaks. No downtime. Just constant vigilance. That's not prey. That's a threat. Theric watched the process, its crystalline eyes tracking the data flowing across Reeves's screen. You are asking me to pretend to be something I am not. To present false information as truth. I'm asking you to use the appearance of strength to avoid a fight you can't win without destroying what you're protecting, Reeves said. There's a difference between lying and being strategic. It took another 4 hours of work, but Reeves managed to create a complete false history for Theric. According to the records, the Guardian had maintained perfect operational status for 1,358 years. Never offline, never dormant, never failing in its duties. The archive chambers showed constant monitoring. The defense systems showed regular activation tests. Everything appeared locked down and protected by something that had proven it would stand watch forever. When the Raider ships finally appeared on long-range sensors, 72 hours later, Reeves and Theric were ready. The three vessels approached cautiously, their sensors scanning the station. Reeves watched the readings on his terminal, watching as they probed Kepler-7's defenses. And then, as if on cue, they saw what they were looking for, a fully operational defense platform, standing at constant alert, broadcasting sensors readings that showed active monitoring going back over 1,000 years. The Raider ships slowed their approach. Then, after a tense few minutes of scanning, they began to turn away. They're leaving, Reeves said, almost not believing it. They're actually leaving. Theric's voice was quiet when it spoke. Your species is young, but you are not without cunning. You have taught me something today, Reeves. Sometimes defense is not about strength. Sometimes it is about making your enemy believe you are too strong to challenge. Reeves leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. He was exhausted, his mind felt like it had been wrung out, but they'd done it. They'd faced a genuine threat and solved it without firing a single shot, without destroying the very thing they were trying to protect. We're pretty good at figuring things out, Reeves said with a tired smile. Even when the odds are against us. The Raider ships disappeared from the sensors like they'd never been there at all. One moment they were on the edge of detection range, the next they were gone, their engines burning bright as they jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished into the darkness between stars. Reeves watched the readings until they were completely clear, then he just sat down on the cold metal floor and started laughing. It started as a chuckle, something small and almost involuntary. But then it grew, building into genuine laughter that came from deep in his chest. 3 days of work, sleepless nights, bleeding hands and pure desperation, and it had worked. They'd bluffed their way through an actual threat. They'd faced down raiders and won without firing a single shot, without spilling any blood. It was absurd and impossible and completely real. You find humor in our success? Theric asked, tilting its massive head to look down at the human sitting on the ground. I find humor in the fact that we're still alive, Reeves said between bursts of laughter. I find humor in the fact that we just outsmarted a group of professional criminals using nothing but wires and lies and pure stubbornness. Theric made that strange mechanical sound again, the one that might have been laughter or might have been something else entirely. But Reeves was pretty sure the ancient Guardian was amused. After a few more minutes, Reeves's laughter faded into exhaustion. His body was catching up to him all at once. He'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for days, and now that the immediate danger had passed, everything hurt. His hands were wrapped in bandages that needed changing. His back felt like it had been twisted into a pretzel. His eyes were gritty and sore. He was pretty sure he smelled terrible. Theric extended one massive hand toward him, palm up. The gesture was unmistakably an offer of help. Reeves looked at the hand, This ancient alien guardian that had stood still for 13 centuries, that had just regained the ability to move because Reeves had spent 3 days fixing its joints. He took it, letting Theric pull him up to his feet with surprising gentleness. "What happens now?" Reeves asked, brushing dust off his clothes. It was the question that had been hanging in the back of his mind since Theric had first asked for his help. "I mean, the raiders are gone. The archive is secure. Your systems are mostly functional again. I should probably head back to my ship. Captain Hollis is going to be wondering what happened to me." Theric was quiet for a long moment. The Guardian's crystalline eyes seemed to glow brighter as it considered the question. When it finally spoke, its voice was different from before, less formal, less mechanical. Almost contemplative. "The mandate given to me by my creators was simple," Theric said. "Guard the archive forever. Trust no one. Move for no one. Remain vigilant until the end of time itself. I was built with a singular purpose, to be the perfect sentinel. Perfect in my dedication. Perfect in my isolation." Reeves listened, sensing that the Guardian was working through something important. "For 1300 years I carried out that mandate perfectly," Theric continued. "I did not move. I did not falter. I did not question. I was exactly what my creators intended me to be. And then I broke. The rust took hold. The systems began to fail. And I was helpless to stop it." The Guardian looked down at Reeves, and there was something almost vulnerable in that gaze. "The architects of my design never predicted someone like you would come," Theric said. "They designed me to be superior in every way, stronger, faster, more durable. They designed me to distrust biological life forms, to see them as threats or obstacles. They created a guardian that would never need anyone else." Reeves felt something shift in the air between them. This wasn't just a guardian speaking to a human anymore. This was something deeper. "But they were wrong," Theric said. "They were wrong about so many things. They did not predict that their perfect guardian would eventually fail. They did not predict that the youngest species, the ones still learning to walk between stars, might possess something their ancient wisdom could not: adaptability, creativity, the willingness to attempt the impossible and the stubbornness to see it through." Theric extended both hands, cradling Reeves gently between them. It was almost a gesture of holding something precious. "You have shown me something, Reeves," the Guardian said. "Something the architects specifically designed me never to learn. You have shown me that trust is not weakness. That asking for help is not failure. That the strength of one being, alone for 13 centuries, is nothing compared to the strength of two beings working together. Even if one of them is still learning to properly leave its own planet." Reeves found himself smiling despite his exhaustion. "Stay," Theric said. And it wasn't a command or a request. It was something closer to an invitation. Not as a servant. Not as a subordinate. As a partner. The mandate was to guard this archive forever. But I have learned that forever is a very long time to stand alone. Guard this place with me, Reeves. A human and an ancient sentinel. Two beings from different worlds, different times, different purposes, now united in a single task." Reeves looked up at the Guardian, at this ancient machine that had been frozen in place for over a millennium, that had just learned what it meant to trust another being. He thought about his old life. The salvage operations, the constant moving from station to station, the endless search for profit and survival. He thought about the archive, about the dangerous knowledge locked away in the vault beneath their feet, about all the civilizations that had destroyed themselves because they'd obtained information they weren't ready to handle. "You know, Captain Hollis is going to send someone to check on me eventually," Reeves said. "The company's going to want answers about what happened here. Then we will tell them a story," Theric said. "We will tell them that the archive chamber is unstable, that the containment systems require constant monitoring, that it would be unsafe to remove the guardian who maintains the seals. We will give them reasons to leave us undisturbed." "More lies," Reeves said, but he was grinning. "Strategic deception," Theric corrected, and Reeves was almost certain the guardian was practicing humor now. "You have taught me well." Reeves climbed down from Theric's hand and looked around the archive chamber. The vault beneath their feet held knowledge that could unmake civilizations. History had proven that. But now it also held something else. A partnership between two beings who had learned to trust each other. A human salvage worker and an ancient alien guardian, standing together to protect what needed to be protected. "All right," Reeves said, moving toward the equipment he'd need to set up a more permanent station in the chamber. "Let's make this official. I'm going to need a few things from my ship. Supplies, better tools, maybe some actual furniture because I'm not sleeping on the floor for the next 1,000 years. And we're going to need to set up some kind of system so we can monitor the containment field together. This isn't a one-person job anymore. Agreed, Theric said. And Reeves? Thank you. For refusing to abandon me. For seeing someone, something, that needed help and choosing to provide it rather than simply walking away. Reeves looked back at the Guardian and smiled. That's what humans do. We see problems and we figure them out. Sometimes it works out pretty well. As Reeves moved through the archive chamber, beginning the work of making it a proper home for two unlikely Guardians, the knowledge in the vault beneath their feet remained sealed and safe. And up above, in the darkness between stars, word began to spread in certain circles that Kepler 7 was not a place to visit. The station was guarded. Perfectly guarded. By something that had been watching over it for over 1,000 years and showed no signs of ever stopping. The raiders never came back. And Reeves and Theric settled into their new life together. Two beings separated by species and history, united by circumstance and choice, standing eternal watch over the secrets that the universe had deemed too dangerous to know.